quarantine dream. This is kinda extreme. Wanna take one for the team, but I'm not sure what team I'm on. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Corona Connections Worldwide, the podcast where I catch up with my friends in different countries to see how the coronavirus pandemic has affected them. I am your host, Angela Callender. I am broadcasting per my Zoom background from Canal Street today, an empty Canal Street early in the pandemic near the Rubenstein's department store with some Happy Mardi Gras signs hanging from it. Today we are going to Curaçao, where I had the pleasure of meeting two really great people on Tinder when I visited there in December 2017. It was a really exciting and fun trip for me. It had been a year full of tumult and change. I moved, I went on 2 road trips, one of which ended in a car fire. I went through a breakup. I lived with my parents for a little bit, even as I turned 30 years old. And at the end of the year, I realized that I had some vacation days saved up because I worked remotely during my road trips, and I didn't want to squander them. And I'd never really taken an international trip on my own before, and thought I would go somewhere warm where I could do some diving, and the flights were cheap to Curaçao, so off I went, and it was fun and rewarding to travel alone, but I was also really lucky to have made some friends on dating apps, which I had never even been on before on account of the aforementioned breakup and the relationship that preceded it that kind of happened around the time that the dating apps were peaking. So that was just a funny and very positive welcome to the dating app world. It's not always gone so positively for me, don't worry. This seems like a good place to mention that there's not a lot of fact-checking that goes into this show. I tell all of my guests that I'm not trying to give them a research project or homework or anything. I'm mostly trying to focus on their personal experiences. So sometimes they share facts or dates, and I kind of just go along with it. I do sort of try to fact check myself. I made some remarks about the Netherlands in this episode, with it having some of the highest per capita death counts, which I think is something I saw one time on a source that I don't remember, and it changes day by day. So maybe around the time that we recorded this, which was October 15th, that was what was happening. But believe it or not, despite all of the false starts and use of the word "like" that you hear on my behalf through this podcast, I do cut out a lot of my own ramblings when I do the edits. And if I'm ever spouting some kind of spurious information, I try to just cut that out if I can't back it up somewhere. Of course, we are on the social media platforms at Corona Connects Pod and on Twitter at Rona Connects Pod. So if you catch me or any of my guests saying something that you think is wrong, feel free to bring it to my attention in the social media universe. If you have any questions, if there was something that I should have asked that I didn't, I would love to pop in with these people again and see if they can answer any of your questions if you have them. So yeah, find us on the social medias, engage if you feel so inclined, and please do rate and review and subscribe on iTunes or whatever platform you are listening on. All right, here we go. Let me introduce the two of you. I met Maria and Curt both on Tinder in Curaçao almost 3 years ago. Maria was actually the first person I'd ever met off Tinder, so that was fun. She gave me a good tour of the downtown area of Curaçao, and then because this is
my first too.
You're kidding! I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, and then this is how this is my game. The very next person I met was Curt, and I brought him to your DJ set.
That was a nice coordination.
That's awesome.
And actually, Maria, there was somebody I was supposed to have met a few days before. I probably told one or both of you the story because it was pretty funny. It was maybe my first night in town. and he invited me to some dancing event, and I was like, okay, like seems completely out of my comfort zone, but sure, I'm brave, I'm out here, I'm doing it. And I went, and on the invite it had said something like no slippers, but the only shoes that I had were like flip flops, so I wore them, and they didn't let me in the event. In fact, like I paid, I went in the event, I was like trying to like look for this dude, and they actually approached me and told me I had to leave because I was wearing the wrong shoes. But I think I got my 10 guilders back, and the guy messaged me on Tinder that he like saw me leaving. It was like sort of a Cinderella type event, but I never actually met him.
Whoa.
That's definitely one for the storybooks for sure.
Yeah.
And now we've remained friends through Instagram, and you have both so generously agreed to be on my podcast and tell me a little bit about your coronavirus experiences, which I imagine will be a little different. This will be the first time I've interviewed anyone in an island country, so I think just you're already a little bit naturally quarantined, and so I'm sure that affected some of your rules. But before we get into that, do one or both of you want to give me a rundown? Like, Curaçao is an interesting country. Just like a lot of the Caribbean, it has ties to the Netherlands still, but different from like Guadeloupe, which is still technically part of France. Like, do one of you, Curt, you were on the call first. If you want to jump in first, just explain like how Curaçao runs in your relationship with the Netherlands.
Well, we're basically we have the European passport of the Netherlands, but we're not considered like part of the Netherlands like France and Guadeloupe. So it's basically we call it autonome. I don't know how you
an autonomous region.
Autonomous,
probably.
yeah. So that's pretty much it when it comes to Curaçao and Netherlands right now.
And your money is still the guilder, like a old form of the Dutch money. You never changed over to the euro or anything, right?
No. I heard that there was talks about it recently about possibly becoming part of the European Union itself.
Okay.
And with the possibility of getting the euro, but nothing concrete yet. So.
Got it. And then culturally, Dutch is still pretty widely spoken on the island. Is that right? Or not so widely?
Mainly Papiamento.
Maybe, yeah. And that was going to be the next thing that I got to. So, you like, in Papiamento, is that spoken anywhere else, or is that pretty unique to Curaçao, the language?
Definitely Aruba and Bonaire for sure.
Okay. Got it. So Aruba, Bonaire, and Curaçao were all three Dutch islands historically, and you share that common Papiamento language.
Yeah.
Okay. Very
Even though Aruba writes it a bit differently.
Okay. And so both of you growing up in Curaçao, did you grow up in Papiamento was your first language?
Yeah, for me, for sure.
And for you too, Maria?
Actually, multi-language. It was Papiamento and English and Dutch and Spanish all at the same time.
Oh, really? Yeah. That's so cool. I love that about Caribbean nations, that there's just so many cultural influences and languages that you wind up speaking. Okay, so cool. I just think that's a bit of interesting cultural background, and I don't think a lot of Americans know a ton about Curaçao, probably not more than knowing about the liquor Blue Curaçao. Which in fact did the triple sec Curaçao started being made there. I got to tour the factory when I was visiting, and it comes in all sorts of colors, but for whatever reason, blue is the most popular one in the United States and one of the only ones that's marketed.
Do they import the other ones?
I don't know. I don't think that I've ever seen one. Maybe there's some, because there's no difference in flavor, right? Like, I think it's all like.
No, there is.
Is there? Oh.
Yeah, we have coffee, chocolate.
Oh, sure. But like the actual, like the clear one and the blue one, I don't know if they taste different, right? I thought I was under the impression the blue was just like for gimmicks, but I'm probably misremembering. I would trust your judgment more than mine. Although you don't drink, so maybe not.
Hey, I definitely know about it, but no, I don't drink anymore. I used to, but not anymore. part.
All right. And then Maria, I know that you are a DJ slash barista.
Yes.
And how have those industries been affected by the lockdown? Like, are you, like here, I would say, at least in New Orleans, like DJs aren't playing gigs. Like we don't have that kind of, bars are really newly reopening, but usually for takeout drinks and usually for very limited like admission, I guess you could say. So the music scene has been like really negatively impacted here. And so are you still able to do any DJing? Or are you mostly doing your coffee thing?
Yeah, only the coffee thing. Actually, we had a lockdown and everything was closed. So we had like 2 or 3 months, I think it was 2, that we didn't do anything, that I couldn't do anything actually in my industry. And like DJing is nothing right now. And after the lockdown, I got called by this cafe to start a new job.
Okay.
So I started there and I'm working 6 days a week there right now.
Okay.
After the lockdown.
So, you're the cafe you had been. Were you still at Bagels, or were you at a different one before lockdown?
No. I stopped at Bagels like almost 2 years, I think now.
Okay.
And
oh, hello.
Sorry.
Oh, no.
Almost 2 years I stopped. Yeah.
Hi, oh friends.
They're playing around me. Yeah.
But so you had been working at a different cafe before the...
Yeah, actually I was like in between looking for a new job when the lockdown happened. So I was like just working temporary at this restaurant at night. And then it happened and then I just stayed home for like almost 3 months. Waiting for it to pass over.
Yeah. Did they have, this is a question I keep forgetting to ask in my other episodes, but I've been interested in the type of like unemployment type of benefits that they offered in different places when people weren't allowed to work. Like, did the government have unemployment funds for people in your situation who are out of work?
Yes. Well, actually they did have, but it wasn't dependable. Okay. So it wasn't happening very fast. So luckily I have like family members that helped out with rent money and grocery money and stuff like that. And after 2 months, I got like 1,000 guilders from the government. But I only accepted it once because after that I got a job and then I didn't need to get any more help. But they were like calling and investigating if you still need help and stuff like that. So that was really nice though. At the end of the day.
And who was the 1,000 guilders made available to? Like, did you have to prove that you had lost a job, or could anybody really sign up for it?
You should have like a letter from your work.
Okay.
And I had this, so I was working part-time because I was in between jobs. And the first ones that they, let's say they don't have jobs for are the part-timers. Mm-hmm. So only the full-timers that have a contract would get paid and probably keep working because they would be doing deliveries at the restaurants. It depends how creative they have been in all the kinds of type of restaurants there is. But at the one that I was at the moment while the lockdown happened, they had deliveries, but they only had like 1 or 2 people working so they can keep the cost low. And they send out letters for everybody so you can give the government your letter and get some help from the government.
Okay. And you said you only accepted the money one time, but like, what did it happen on 2-month cycles or something that like at the end of 2 months they would offer another 1,000 guilders or like how often could you?
They, you should just tell them like how many times you were out of work and they would be like, okay, and you couldn't pay your bills and stuff like that. If you can prove that, and you can get help from them. And you also could get like, coupons, food coupons.
Okay.
So you can go to the grocery store and buy groceries. But I didn't apply for that one. I only applied for for the money so I could pay rent.
Right.
That was my main concern for those months.
Was that just you being, I don't know, like a good citizen and not wanting to take advantage of the system, or like you felt that you could afford your groceries otherwise and you had help, or were there things that barred you from applying for the food stamps?
Well, it felt like you had to do a lot for it.
Okay.
And I didn't need so much help. So I was like, no, if I can still manage myself, why would I go through all that to get something that I can manage, Maybe somebody else can use it.
Yeah, for sure. And what about you, Curt? Were you able to work throughout the time, or did you spend some time without a job as well? I can't remember what work you did, so that's why I couldn't jump right into your industry talk the same way.
Right. Like, I definitely do photography part-time, but my full-time job is I'm a security supervisor at the local Renaissance. And with us,
a Renaissance hotel?
Yeah.
Okay.
And with us, it was quite a blessing because right before the whole Corona thing happened, we were owned, because we're like a franchisee. We were owned by a company called Metacorp, and we were bought over by a U.S. company, Wind Creek Hospitality. They're located in Alabama.
Okay.
And they bought us over, and their whole principle is like taking care of your employees. And when the Corona hit, the first employees that were sent home with pay were the casino employees. They did cut ties with every contractor. And then they were gradually like looking at the situation and managing their costs accordingly, and the safety of the employees. So they're like, okay, we don't need as much casino workers right now because people can't leave to go to the casino because of the lockdown. So casino people stay home. They sent everyone from management home. Then followed housekeeping, and at one point it was just the security staff for the whole hotel. And we
the security staff were the only ones who were kept on?
Yes.
Okay.
And we actually had to wear different caps at that point. We were housekeeping. We had to like cook our own. We had to cook our own food. We had to do maintenance around the hotel. So every single section that other departments had to do, we kind of took over. But we were luckily paid our full salary throughout the whole time. And they did cut out the bonuses, but when things reopened and things started to move along in the US, they actually came back and paid us the bonus that we lost during quarantine.
Wow, it sounds like you're really well taken care of. That's
yes.
Good to hear. Did the hotel stay open then? Like, what were the conditions of the lockdown? I guess would be a good question to ask.
Basically, the hotel didn't stay open. We had a couple of guests that were basically preparing to arrange their return to their country. So the front desk staff stayed till they all left. And when we had no guests left, the security was just there for basically the safety and security of the property. And that was about it.
Got it. And are you able to remember back to when this lockdown was put in place? Like, I know it was March 16th in New Orleans was like when everything just like hit really quickly. A case had finally been found in Louisiana nearby. And yeah, that's when the stay-at-home order was put in place, and a lot of non-essential businesses closed right at the midpoint of March.
Yeah, it was basically almost the end of March. I think that they went into full lockdown because at first they had a curfew. They had a system in play of don't have more than 3 people in one group. But I would say near the end of March, it was probably when there was a full lockdown.
And you said that lasted 2 months. So basically till the end of May.
Yeah, roughly. I think we still kind of felt the effects of it, of course, like past that. But I think when they reopened, the restaurants were probably one of the first businesses that were allowed to open again, but with just deliveries. Like everything was delivery or takeout. There was no sitting at a restaurant and eating.
And when you were in the strictest part of your lockdown, and you mentioned even that a curfew preceded the lockdown, was it very strictly enforced? Like if people were out walking around on the streets or I don't know, on the beaches or anything, were there like cops out that were giving people fines or even worse, or was it kind of left up to people to abide by it on their own terms?
Well, there were definitely, you felt a presence of police. They definitely policed the lockdown. If you were caught out, you definitely got a hefty fine. But they did have later on a system of, based on your license plate, you were allowed to go out on certain days for, essential stuff. But the strictest part of the lockdown, only if you had letter from the government that you had to work, like the whole security staff received a letter that showed that they had to come to work, and we had to also provide our schedule. So it's not like just because we had the letter, we can go wherever we wanted. If the day that we were out, it's not scheduled that we're supposed to work, we can get a fine as well. So everything was very strictly enforced there.
And was that like when you were out going to work, like did you find yourself stopped and having to show these documents?
Yes, I was stopped twice, one at night and one in the midday. But as soon as they saw the letter, they took a quick look at my schedule and, they said, okay, go on.
Got it.
It wasn't any hassle there.
That's good. And so Maria, for the 2 months that you didn't have a job and like didn't have those provisions to leave the house, like what were you basically just in the house? Did you have like ways that you could escape? And are you living with friends or with family at this point?
No, I was living alone.
Okay.
And in the actually in the city, like right, I mean, the last time that it was here, I was in Peter Meyer, right? So I was living in Scarlo, like right next to Bagels.
Okay, I kind of remember the geography a little bit of that.
Yeah. So I just stayed inside, and just like Curt said, we had like days that you were allowed to go out, and we had swimming days also. That was one of the best parts. Like you could go swimming.
I bet. I wish I could have gone swimming.
Right? Or you can go for a walk or like do some sports on the streets. But it was. I can't lie. I had a great time. I had like time to like look inwards,
No, absolutely.
And sit still for a while. And just figure things out for yourself.
Yeah, no, the silver linings have come up a time or two. Somebody in Spain on my last episode was saying that like he thinks it's cool how people have gotten really creative, both with like, let's make masks and make really cool looking masks or something like that, or just being creative with ways to use their time. And, I think there are absolutely benefits that come through it. I know I certainly got to catch up on a lot of personal projects because I also, so the way it worked for me is that I was doing my freelance photography and also working on a TV show that I had just started working as a stand-in on 2 weeks before lockdown started, and I was really loving it. And then, so like the Friday before lockdown officially started, they gave us the notification that we were postponing production for quote unquote 3 weeks, which everybody kind of knew it wasn't going to be 3 weeks. And then also Uber driving, which seemed just not recommendable at that point. So the way unemployment works here is that each state offers its own unemployment benefits, and Louisiana is known to have a pretty bad unemployment program. So under Louisiana's unemployment, I only qualified for $187 a week, which is, I don't know what the conversion rate for that would be, but it's, you know, not, I couldn't have paid rent on that amount or anything. Okay, yeah, if you're familiar with it. So yeah, and the cost of living just is not right for that. So the federal government approved the $600 increase to that amount everywhere. So now I was making $787 a week before taxes, and I had taxes taken out of it. But like in Massachusetts, for instance, people could make regularly like $600 a week, and they were also getting the $600 benefit. So people in other states were actually like doing great. I thought what I was making was honestly about fair. Like that's about what I would be hoping to make with my collective of things. But there were definitely sort of unfair parts of it because you started, like the minimum wage is so low here that people who were considered quote unquote essential were going in to work their supermarket jobs. You know, being in a place, it was before they had the plexiglass dividers or anything. They're being in, you know, one of the most dangerous places where they're interacting with the most people, and they're making considerably less than $700 a week. So there started to be this sort of understandable bad blood on the part of essential workers who are like, yo, you're calling us essential, and people are being paid way more to sit home. Like, what are you doing? So I understood that attitude a lot. And, you know, it happened the way that it happened. They were just trying to pass a package quickly. It's like the only thing our government has been able to agree on in like 10 years probably, that both sides were like, okay, $600, okay, $600, have it. But then that ran out at the end of July, and the government has not been able to come to an agreement for the new benefits. There was a lesser package that the president executive ordered into action that wasn't really how that was supposed to happen. And I just, after the big package ran out at the end of July, that's when I had gone back to Uber driving, and I didn't bother, kind of like Maria was saying, like, well, the money that I was making at that point wouldn't have been quite enough. And I just figured at this point, like, I have my own way of getting by at this point, and I'd rather just like, you know, be out and doing things a little bit. And Uber driving became sort of interesting. I wasn't making a podcast, but I was still like picking people's brains about their experiences just around here, because it is such a unique time that we're living through.
Yeah, it is.
Well, I have a question. You said that they let you go out based on, you said your license plate?
Yes.
So what about people who didn't drive?
Well, I guess that the people that did not drive, the ones that I know of, usually they would ask for help from someone that did have a car or was allowed to go out that day. I noticed that they did that. And I think there was, the people that worked with in healthcare, that taking care of the elderly, they were allowed to like pretty much go every day based on the people that they were taking care of. But yeah, most people that I know of that did not drive, they would usually ask a friend or a family that was able to go out that day to do grocery for them.
Mm-hmm. And then, so I was thinking it was just maybe like a designation, like, you know, that your license plate ends in an odd number, so you're allowed out that day. So that was specifically about going out in your car. But like, what if you wanted to like do one of these swimming days or whatever? Like, how was that regulated, and how are they like determining who was allowed to go out and go swimming on any given day?
That was on Sunday, I believe. Like Sunday was the specific day that people were allowed to go exercise and swimming when the lockdown was pretty much at its peak.
Or actually, if you had like, it was only the letters from the license plate. So if you had like your day to go out, you could also go swimming eventually.
Okay.
So if in the beginning, the beaches, everything was closed. So eventually, when they put the license plate coordination, they started putting also days that you can like you can go swimming on those days that your license plate is allowed to go out.
Got it. And then how widely spread was the virus ever there? Like, did you have big outbreaks, or did you do a pretty good job of containing it from the onset?
We have a bigger outbreak now than before, than in the lockdown. The second wave is bigger.
Yeah, it was basically, I think I told you about it. Of course, I was in Europe at the time, but Curaçao pretty much had it under control at one point, and then a couple of people went to Aruba, went to Miami, came back.
And you said they went on their yachts, right? They were just kind of like
yacht to Aruba, yeah. And when they came back, they organized a children's party, and some of the kids got infected. Kids went to school, infected other kids.
It's really like that, then.
Yeah,
I heard about it. I didn't know it was a real story.
Yeah, it started with the kids to the teacher, other kids. Other kids went home, got infected. So it was pretty much that. Like one group of people just decided to go and get the virus and bring it back to Curaçao.
Did they trace it? Do they know whether they traced it to Aruba or Miami, or does it not really matter?
No, at that point, it does. I don't think it doesn't matter which corona they brought over. They definitely did not go and check if it was specifically Aruba.
Well, the rumor that I got from my friend in El Salvador was that the El Salvador president was not in El Salvador through this whole lockdown. He was in Miami himself, and that they had a film crew that like set up a room that looked just like his room. So when he did his press briefings and stuff, so Miami keeps coming back up in these stories. Do you happen to know any numbers in terms of like deaths either before the latest spike or after, or?
Well, number of deaths.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can't really say it's a good news, but from what you've seen around the world, for the longest time we only had one death, and I think I saw in the newspaper today that a doctor from Bonaire that came to Curaçao for treatment passed away from corona. I think that would be only the second person that...
But it doesn't count then if it came from Bonaire.
Yeah.
Do you think? I was discussing this with my mom today. We were saying, but does it count or doesn't count? Because he got it in Bonaire, right? Mm-hmm. And then he came here for treatment, and he died here. So...
Is it common that Curaçao is considered to have better healthcare than in Bonaire? Like, are you known to have good hospitals and good healthcare?
I think it's we just got a new hospital, and I think they stocked it with new equipments and instruments. So I think between Aruba and Bonaire, Curaçao is currently the one with the better hospital. But the interesting thing is, like, the very first cases in Curaçao, none of them were locals. They were all like tourists. So that's why I threw Bonaire in there, because they counted those as well.
Is it the thing where there's bound to be a sort of friendly rivalry between like Curaçao and Bonaire and Aruba just because of your shared history, or is it not that friendly? Like, are they enemies of yours? Like,
depends.
I wouldn't say enemy.
No.
It's. Let me just say it like this:
friendly sister island.
Yeah, I think it's not like serious, but we tend to like joke with each other a little bit.
Yeah, like brother and sisters.
Yeah, no, that's sweet. I like the idea of that. Got it. So that's really interesting then. So despite what sounds like maybe a little outbreak of mostly tourists at the beginning, there was this one death, and now even with what sounds like a more considerable spike, you still only have one other death that may or may not even count as a Curaçao death. So it sounds like pretty good management, but also like a situation where people probably will start to take it, or maybe already have started taking it less seriously because they're like, no one is dying from this here. And did that cause was there a backlash against the lockdown at first? Were people like, this is insane, like it's not even bad here, nobody's dying? Or were people pretty compliant with the rules, even if it made for some hardships for them?
Well, I would say the majority was very compliant. I think the people that were the ones that were feeling the need to get out of the quarantine the most, of course, was the business owners, and interestingly, the politicians as well. Like some of them kind of felt like the need that our economy is dying, so we need to do something. But other than that, there wasn't really a whole backlash against the quarantine.
Got it. Because in addition to tourism, what are your big industries there? I know you've got the refineries for oil and gas. But like, what else is your industry? Because I think it makes for an interesting dilemma. It's a dilemma here too, because we're such a tourism fueled economy that like you can, I don't know, it seemed like you had a pretty safe like Curaçao ecosystem. You probably like squashed the virus pretty quickly because again, you are kind of always in quarantine. You live on an island, but opening yourself up to outsiders is then when you put yourself at risk again. So it seems like a very fine line for a country like yours to have to walk. And what are the rules around tourism now? Like, are people allowed to come in, or I'm sure very strictly regulated?
Yeah, definitely strictly regulated. For Europe, I think they are opening the borders for 3 U.S. states. I think New York, and I can't remember the other two. But they're definitely letting 3 U.S. states come in.
I didn't realize that other countries would be like that specific. Like I figured they would either like let in Americans or not. But I guess it makes sense. Although New York was such a bad spot.
Yeah.
It seems like an interesting one to let in, but it is where so much of the business is.
I think I don't know if it's like because it had to do with if we're traveling from Curaçao to the States, it's usually either you're landing in Miami, or I think if you're traveling with JetBlue, you go to New York. I think it's pretty much based on where the airlines are going. Mm-hmm. So I think that's why New York's in there.
Okay, that does make sense. And then as far as people traveling from other countries, like when the people left on their boat for Bonaire in Miami, is that kind of harder to regulate anyway? Like, do you think maybe even under quarantine were more people maybe scooting off to other islands without really being monitored? Because it does seem like that would be a little harder to control.
Yeah, well, I think after like that incident, they definitely have the Coast Guards that probably definitely going to look more into it.
Mm. And you mentioned school. Are kids, as far as you know, have kids been back in regular school, or did they get the option to do a virtual school?
Currently, they're just regular school. So
but they put them in groups right now. So you have like divided classrooms.
Okay.
So they don't have like a lot of kids in the rooms. Normally you have like 30 kids in one room, and now you have like 15 or something. That's what I heard from my sister.
Okay, got it. Does her sister have kids, or is she a teacher?
No, she's a teacher.
Okay. How
she does have kids though. Yeah, she has one daughter in the house. So my niece goes to school too.
And how does your sister feel? Like as a teacher, does she feel comfortable going? Does she think it's an effective system and she feels well enough protected?
I think she was feeling fine until a few like last week. They had like one child at my niece's school that was infected and kept coming to school, and so she was a very concerned parent then. Then she didn't want my niece to go to school then, obviously. because they weren't quarantining this person, and it was an odd story. I was like, okay, so this person is infected and still keeps coming to school. Is very, very strange.
Yeah,
But she just kept my niece at home just to be
right.
safe.
Right. Yeah, you would think that, well, the school, for one, would really want to not allow that to happen. And then,
Exactly.
that is interesting. Curt, I did want to hear a little bit about your travels. So you, as you mentioned a minute ago, you went to Europe. How long were you traveling, and did you had you already had the trip planned, and did you reconsider or have to postpone or anything? Like, how did that trip come together? And
The trip was planned in May, actually, and it got moved from May all the way to the 3rd of August.
okay.
So I
Wait, sorry. You had planned it. You had planned it in advance to go in May, and then you had to
no,
delay it, or you planned.
I was supposed to fly in May,
Right.
but they closed off the airport. We were not
Yeah.
allowed to travel, so it kept moving back, moving back, moving back, and then I finally got a date in August.
Okay. Were you reconsidering? Like, was there a part of you that was like, is it even worth traveling right now? Or had you like heard enough good feedback from the places that you figured it would be okay?
You know, mostly my friends were the ones that were like, "Are you sure you want to go there? Or are you sure that they have a lot of corona cases over there?" And but me, I didn't really let it affect me. I'm like, if uh, the company I worked for, they trained us in advance on how to deal, and I'm like, okay, if I just follow my procedures, if I keep my hands away from my eyes and my mouth, and just be mindful, because I think when you're on vacation, even before corona, you tend to have this feeling of like, oh, I'm on vacation, and you kind of let your guard down a little bit.
Yeah.
So I definitely kept my guard up, and the good thing was that when I got there, the rules they had in place kind of kept reminding you to keep your guard up. Because I landed in Amsterdam, and went from Amsterdam to Brussels. At one point, traveled through France and hit Spain, and then came back to Brussels.
And were you
But I
traveling
definitely,
by train while you were there, or were you flying, or how were you getting around?
when I got there, we traveled by train at one point, but mainly by car, just a
Oh,
road trip.
okay.
Um, but it was interesting to see how the different countries handled things similarly or different. And I would say that between Belgium, France, and Spain, they kind of handled things similarly. Netherlands was kind of different from them.
In what way?
For example, in the Netherlands, they say you're only allowed, like, you have to wear a face mask either on public transport or when you go to a supermarket. If you're sitting at a cafe, if you're like just walking around in the streets, they don't wear face masks. But in Belgium and France and Spain, it's as soon as you leave your house or your apartment, you need to have your face mask on at all times, whether it be public transport. The only time you're allowed to remove it is if you're sitting at a bar or eating at a restaurant, and that's it. But as soon as you leave that area, you need to have your face mask on. Their police was all over it. Like, they had a lot of authorities.
And you said in Belgium and France and Spain, that was your experience?
Yes.
Okay, that's interesting because the Spanish guys I talked to last week were saying that, yes, in Spain it was pretty strict, but one of them had traveled to the south of France, so maybe it was just a different region. And he was saying he was surprised by how lax it seemed in France. He was like, nobody was wearing masks. It was crazy. So it could have been that he was there at a different time, or maybe just in whatever region he was in, it was a little bit different. Or he likes to rag on France a lot, so maybe it was just. And then were you able to go there? Like, did your Curaçao citizenship, did that give you like any like special access to Europe, or was America's just like cut off from a lot of places? Yeah. So like when I found out that you were traveling at all, I was like, whoa, that's crazy. Like someone's in Europe. I didn't know people could go there anymore. Yeah, but
it's kind of like we are considered Dutch, right? So we do have a European passport. So it's pretty much kind of the same as someone from the Netherlands just traveling to Belgium or Spain. So I didn't have much issues with that. The only thing I had to do, and this was specifically for Belgium, is if I was staying in Belgium for more than a week, I had to fill out a form of where I'm staying, how long I'm planning on staying in Belgium, just so their government would know, that I'm there, and that if any case, who they need to contact in regards to me and my travels.
Got it. And then when you had mentioned when you came back to Curaçao, then you had a quarantine that you had to subject yourself to when you were back home. Is that right?
Yes. It was kind of interesting because when I came back, we have like the SVB, which is they handle with our healthcare, especially at the Renaissance. We're insured by the SVB. And SVB says that I didn't have to go to quarantine. But when I checked with HR said that on the government's page, it says that I do have to go to quarantine, and they're focused on what the government says. So I had to go to a 14-day quarantine. That was without pay, which I was, fine with. But
so you had taken a paid vacation. I'm guessing you used vacation days, or was the whole thing unpaid?
No, it was a paid vacation, but I extended it with some.
Technically, you had to. That's kind of interesting, but it sounds like you're okay with it, and I can see it being a little bit of HR gray area for sure. Like, do we cover the quarantine or not? Okay, but when you went to Amsterdam, there wasn't any quarantine on their end.
No, when I got there, I did hear that after they started a small little lockdown again, curfew. But when I was there, I was kind of surprised because I've been in Belgium for more than a month, and I've experienced how they handle it. So to me, I'm walking down the streets with my face mask, and I'm looking at everyone just walking and talking together in big groups and all of that. And then I see a train pass by or a tram with people with face masks, and I'm like, okay, what's going on here? Like, I don't get it. But apparently, that's the rule they had.
Yeah, because in the Netherlands, I was surprised to see has one of the worst records right now in terms of like deaths per capita or something, I think.
But honestly, I think with them, there was a lot of, I think they didn't take it as seriously at first, because I heard from friends there, definitely heard from my girlfriend in Belgium, that there were a lot of parties. Like, people would, the government would say, okay, we're going to quarantine, and people would have like quarantine parties that has to be broken up. And
I didn't understand that they were having quarantine parties. So,
yeah,
what?
It was like an interesting thing because with them, I believe they announced that you don't have to go to work. Everyone's going to go into quarantine. And the way they took it was like, we don't have work. Let's have a quarantine party. Let's just go and have a party somewhere. And the interesting thing is, it happened in Belgium as well. And a Belgian doctor said that, trust me, after 14 days, we will see a spike in corona cases. And that's exactly what happened. Most of the people that were at that party had to be admitted to the hospital. So it was like fun while it lasted. And then,
not very fun.
yeah, not very fun at all.
Today in Holland, they are closing all the restaurants for like 4 weeks again.
Wow. Yeah. And I mean, I guess that's, everybody's just kind of playing whack-a-mole with the like lockdown. Like it's down, it's up, it's down. And like, I think it does make sense for it to be a sort of like sliding scale. Like, and if our numbers are this low, we can be open. If they go up again, I guess we're going to have to close down. But it certainly makes it tough to navigate. Maria, at the cafe that you're working at now, is it like 50% capacity or anything like that? And are you having to...
It's busy every day over there. It's crazy. It's like they've been open for like a year now. And they have like specialty coffee, like single origin coffee. And like on the island, we have like 3 or 4 places that has like super good coffee and also good food to go with it.
Uh-huh.
So, and they have a very good marketing system. So right now it's like crazy busy every day. Only this week is a little less busy. I guess people are getting a little bit afraid because we had like a few days that we have like 30 infections or so. We definitely felt like it was getting quiet for us then. And people still see it as busy as an outsider when you come to the restaurant. But for us, it was very quiet all of a sudden.
That's interesting. You can kind of see even without the official rules changing, it sounds like people's behavior is being modified based on the different case counts and everything. And what are your mask regulations in Curaçao like?
Mask regulation, actually.
You don't have one?
Like at work, we have to wear the mask because the boss wants us to wear it. So not that the government is saying like you have to wear the mask if you're inside. But I noticed like going to the bank or the bank mostly is where they ask for, and also the hospital, where they ask that you have to wear a mask so you can come.
Okay, that's really interesting. Oh, and then the other thing that I always want to ask about is your testing availability. Like what kind of testing and contact tracing programs are in place there? Like if you wanted to go get a test, can you do it easily and cheaply, or is it not that easy?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Basically, the only thing the island has in place, I didn't hear of anybody just going to get the test just to get a test, but they do have a system in place that if you feel certain symptoms, they do have like a number you can call, but they say that you have to stay home. They'll probably advise you to stay home and that they're going to send someone to test you to be sure. Because I think they don't want, if you're feeling those symptoms, they don't want you to go out and probably infect other people. So they do advise you to stay home and their team would come and test you.
Got it.
Well, actually at work also, everybody that comes in has to be registered. So
as part of contact tracing?
Yeah.
Okay. It was like that at a couple places that I went to earlier, but that seems to be a program that's really fallen off here. Like, I feel like I haven't had to like leave contact information at basically anywhere that I've gone lately. No. But we do have mask rules inside. Masks are required. I don't think outside they are, but a lot of people do wear them outside. Like when I'm walking my dog around, I'll have one with me. And like when I'm in my own neighborhood and if I'm not like around people, I won't put it on. But once I start like being in an area where I'm even just like passing someone on the street, it just feels like the courteous and right thing to do, just to like put it on and get used to it that way. Testing is really widely available here, which I always am. I've been surprised by it because our healthcare system is like so weird and like nothing is free or cheap, and Louisiana like is behind on everything. Like I said, we have one of the worst unemployment things on offer. We have some of the worst school systems. Like it just seems like there's never money for anything here. But we had a really, really widespread and robust free testing program, which was pretty cool. And I went, especially when I first started Uber driving, I was like, oh, I should do this often. The one trip that I've taken, I did a road trip up to Wisconsin, which is near where some of my family lives, and I was going to be seeing my grandma, and I made sure that I like got tested before going up there. But I haven't actually done it in a bit. It's pretty uncomfortable. If you haven't done one, they like stick the thing like way up in your nose, and but like I'm not saying that as it's completely tolerable. Like people shouldn't be afraid of getting tested for that reason. But
luckily, I never did that one.
I think I got 3, and then I even like took I got tested 3 different times. And because one of my neighbors is high risk too. She's been in and out of the hospital a lot, so she takes it seriously, and I see her a lot, so I feel like I should as well. But yeah, I took her through a drive-through testing facility too once, which is like administered by the National Guard, which is kind of interesting because it's just like the soldiers out there in their military uniforms, and you like drive through and they like come up to the window and give you the little thing. And then she actually did it herself, and the woman is like, okay, stick it in your nose and swirl it around, and I'll count to 10 and each side. And so I feel like I've gotten to see like all sorts of different testing options here. But yeah, and then the final question that I like to ask is just what is, and I realize that like the United States is like not the point of focus for everyone in the world, but just feeling like it hasn't been handled very well here, feeling like there, it sounds like you might have run into in the Netherlands a little bit, Curt, like a lot of people who don't take it seriously. Like what is the impression that people have of the United States and how we've handled it there, if people are talking about it at all?
Well, they actually didn't open the borders very quickly to the United States. That's the only thing that I noticed here on the island.
Okay. Yeah. And yeah, that, like you're saying, that does suggest that you don't want our germs.
I guess. I'm not sure if it was not going very well in the States because I wasn't paying a lot of attention on the whole news of the pandemic. Only things that I hear, like if they came through to me, I would pay attention to it, but not. I wasn't looking for any information.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I know. I heard that they are closed the borders for United States and only open for Holland, but they were also closed for Aruba. So that one, Aruba was also a very high risk island at the moment.
Oh, okay.
I think we're still closed for Aruba, right?
Yeah.
And is Aruba considered higher risk? Like, have they just handled it less seriously, or are they a bigger island with more people, or?
No, they're a smaller island, and they kept their borders open to the U.S. as well.
Okay. Yeah. Common denominator. Got it. Did you have anything to add to the United States question, Curt, or do you kind of feel the same way that it's not like super like in your face or on your?
Basically, what my opinion on the United States.
Or yours, and or like your the general perception that you feel in the country.
Like honestly, it's to me, it felt like the U.S. just opened Pandora's box from all the protests because of the George Floyd incident So it was like a series of like chain of events going on. You have protests, Corona hits. You guys have a president that saw it coming. I remember when he said that he didn't want to panic the American people by letting them know that a life-threatening virus is coming. So all of that with this whole fiasco of the election, I think the U.S. it's any country would have its own headache if they're going through what the U.S. is going through right now. So it was definitely handled, in my opinion, quite poorly by the U.S. government.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I just talking to y'all, I feel like you have such an opposite situation. Like I said, like such a low case count, such a super low death count, an economy that stands to be really harmed by a lockdown because you rely so much on tourism and everything. And yet, like, people who, by your accounts, have seemed very compliant and like, okay, this is what needs to be done. Like, it's just so crazy for me to like live in a country where now upwards of 220,000 people have died, and people like still just don't really want to take it as seriously as it needs to be. And it's just been kind of a hard thing to reconcile, I guess.
Yeah, well, it just comes down to how the leadership handles it as well. Because I remember, I don't know if it's a U.S. thing to go up based on statistics, but when 200 plus thousand people die because of this virus, and the reactions like, well, more people would have died if you were president, or it is what it is. It gives you a sense of like a lack of compassion, a lack of empathy for people that are affected by it.
Yeah.
So
most definitely.
Yeah, I think that's definitely part of it. And I mean, just the country, it's really fragmented in a lot of ways. Like, of course, there's the like Republican versus Democrat, that's the ideological differences. But I mean, people in America really are just New York is so different from Florida, so different from Arizona, so different from Montana. Like, there's just like so many different kinds of people and different priorities and different, things that matter and issues that are pressing. So I always try to be like understanding when people have ideas that are different from mine, but there's been, I think, a lot of selfishness in this situation for sure.
Sure.
Do either of you have any final thoughts or questions for each other or for me or anything?
We didn't really talk about how they handled, what I noticed, and over here, how they handle for the people of less fortunate, to help them and stuff like that. There were a lot of charities going on, and a lot of people like donating stuff that I saw then, and also big companies donating stuff to people that lost jobs and didn't get any help. I saw on Facebook on groups that people were asking like, who has enough food for somebody else to eat today, and also people were asking for like, I don't know if we have a system here with the electricity that you can just buy the credit and you put it in the system so you can have electricity. We have a system like that over here, like a prepaid system.
Okay.
So some people were asking if they have like 10 guilders, 25 guilders for electricity so they can put in their houses, especially people with kids and stuff like that. And there were a lot of benefits going on for groceries for people with less money. I saw in Scarlo also they put up a table once a week with food and boxes for all the people in the neighborhood. One thing I noticed, there were a lot of homeless people. They were like knocking on doors and asking for food, because normally they ask probably the tourists in the city, and there's nobody in the city, and especially during the lockdown, there's nobody walking around, so they cannot beg with anybody. So I had like one or two guys that were like screaming at my balcony because I live on the second floor, always asking for a piece of bread. So eventually, when I was doing my trip to the grocery stores once or twice a week, I always like buy an extra loaf, and when I see them, I just give them a bread and some jam or something.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah.
No, and it's also very nice and encouraging to hear of people looking out for each other that way. And there were certainly programs with like food donation and delivery and stuff. Curt, I actually meant to ask you with your hotel that when it was closed and emptied, I know here the hotels that were empty were used to house certain, there's a bridge that there's like a full camp that homeless people live in here, and they realized that could be like a really hot corona spot. So they moved those people to hotel rooms for at least a period of time, which wasn't, at first I was like, they're so nice. People must love that. They get to live in the hotel room. But there's a couple like maybe similar to what you experienced, Maria, like homeless regulars, I would call them. They like come by my street often, and I'll chat with them. And especially one guy had no interest. He's like, it's basically like going to prison. Like there's a cop that stays at the end of the hall. Like I like don't get to go where I want. Like he had no interest in going to the hotel because like it might be on the streets, but he's used to his freedom, and he did not want to go to that hotel. So were there any programs that were offered like that you know of?
Basically with our hotel, it was we did at the earlier stage, we made rooms available for people that had to self-quarantine. But after they self-quarantined and everything, they went and found their own staying spot. But we did house doctors that came over from the States to train our own medical staff. And, they are still staying with us because their training is still going on. Okay. So we do house them.
Got it. Very cool. There was like one other thing. Oh, when you did your quarantine, you just did that at your own house, or was there like somewhere that you're supposed to go for that?
Yeah, I did that at my own house. We had to fill out a form with all of our information, and a representative from the government would call us on different day, asking us if we feel symptoms, if, just to check up on us on how we feel. And they would call you for the whole duration of your quarantine. They would call you on the last day of your quarantine just to be sure. And then if there's no issue, they'll tell you, okay, after this day, your quarantine's over, you can go out and, do your thing.
Got it. Were part of the calls also to like make sure you were in the right place, or was it really just to make sure that you were feeling okay and all that?
Oh, they definitely did not ask me where I'm at, and I noticed after when I got back to work that they were using some hotel employees as well to call all the tourists that came over, because of course there's a lot of tourists coming over, and they can't just call all of them every single day. Mm-hmm. And definitely there were one of my colleagues told me that there were several tourists that were very suspicious as to, like, how did you get my number? Why are you calling me? And and he was like, ma'am, you provided a form at the airport. That is why you gave us your number. So that's why we're calling.
Wait, so you feel that there is once again a pretty like a sort of big tourist presence there again? Like
definitely from not huge, but for example, in the Netherlands, when they were told that they were allowed to travel again and go to Curaçao, there was a big difference between my flight from Curaçao to the Netherlands, mm-hmm. which was pretty much empty, compared to when I was flying back and they said, okay, the borders are open, and the flight was packed.
Okay.
So I think most of them are like, okay, we can go to Curaçao. Let's just go to Curaçao because you can tell that they're tired of they want to go see somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But technically they're supposed to be quarantined for 14 days before doing anything.
Yeah.
Not anymore.
Oh, not anymore?
No, when you come from Holland, you don't have to quarantine 14 days.
Do you have to quarantine for any amount of time?
Nope. Not. I don't know how long it's been like that, but I had my cousin and a friend coming, and they didn't have to quarantine. They did have to get tested though 3 days before the flight.
Okay.
But I think 72 hours. But not quarantine here or even when they get back in Holland.
Got it.
But they probably do call them though, right? Did they call them?
No.
Not a single call. Okay.
Not a single call.
Wow.
Because that's always what made me like, yeah, places that you had to travel, but then like if you have to quarantine for 14 days when you get there, it's like that's as long as I was planning on being gone. Like I can't like build 2 weeks
coming
into
for
this
3
trip.
days and then you have to quarantine 14.
yeah, like that I don't have that kind of time or money, man. Like I can't be like just building 2 weeks of quarantine into a trip.
Yes, because
Exactly. One of them came for like 7 days. The other one came for 18 days.
These are your family members who came?
Yeah.
Got it. It's definitely on their I remember on the form it says that if they do have to quarantine, it's on their own cost as well.
Yeah. Also. But I think eventually they change it for only the high risk places. So it was like, I mean, these people that I know came last month, September, and one of them left October, like a few days ago. And the thing that I did read on the tourism board page, and they said only the high risk places has to quarantine. I don't know which one is the high risk place right now, if the borders are closed for the high risk places, but they were seeing that on the website.
Got it.
But by the time I came back, it was probably Spain was a high risk place because I told them I was in Belgium, I was in France, I was in Netherlands, and as soon as I said Spain, the woman looked at me. It's like, how long have you been in Spain? I'm like, okay, I've been in Spain.
Gosh, it seems so funny because like here you just explained to me that that the Netherlands had like way less strict rules, and it's my impression that the Netherlands has had like worst case counts, and even though Spain has like better rules, like that's it's just really interesting.
It's weird, right?
It's really And then do you find that I imagine most of your tourists in general do come from the Netherlands, and is that still the case, or are you noticing tourists from other places as well?
Germany.
Germany.
Oh well, where I work, then we have like mostly Dutch people and Germans. Yeah.
Got it.
That's the only way I noticed tourists is at work.
But I did notice because we used to definitely, there was a period in time we got a lot of Brazilians coming over, but you do notice now there's almost no sign of Brazilians on the island.
Yeah.
So it's definitely closed off to them.
Yeah, and I wonder if Brazil's borders are also, because I know it's been pretty bad there too. Have to find someone in Brazil to tell me. I don't think I know anybody in Brazil for the podcast, but something to work towards. All right, guys. Well, that's all for me. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed catching up with you in general, but also that you took the time to give me so much good information about how things are going in Curaçao. I would love to return one day. Now that I know I can get there from New York, you're both welcome in New Orleans anytime.
Thank you. Thank you for having us, and I'm definitely looking forward because I heard New Orleans is known for their food. So
yeah, and in fact, my parents came recently. And they were driving down, so they're like, we're gonna stay for a week. And I was like, I mean, stay as long as you want, but I don't know what we're gonna do for a week, because like the bars at the time, the bars were totally closed, and like I said, no music. And but we stayed pretty entertained for the whole week. There, between finding places to eat, and you can still get a good meal for sure, and there's a lot of outdoor activities that kept us busy. So even in quarantine, it's fun and you can do it safely. So yeah, whenever you want to come. All right. Well, thanks again for joining us. I forgot to ask my guests if they had anything they wanted to plug at the end of the episode. So I will do it for them. You can find some of Maria's DJing under her DJ name, Maria de la O, which you can find that at SoundCloud with dashes between Maria-de-la-o. And it's just the letter O. And then she's on Instagram with the same thing, only with dots, maria.de.la.o. And you can find some of Curt's photography at silverflame_photography on Instagram. He just told me that he is getting ready to do a charity sale to benefit children in war-struck countries such as Syria and Yemen. So please check them out, give them some love. And as I did remember to mention at the beginning of the show this time, so I am learning, just another reminder that we too are on the social medias at Corona Connects Pod, or on Twitter at Rona Connects Pod. So thanks for joining, and be back next week with an interview that I haven't recorded yet. So it's going to be a mystery to everyone. Bye.